in practice, it is necessary to use various methodologies or methods in different ways depending on the situation. So, the more weapons you have, the stronger you can be.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process.
Welcome to the next episode of Process Pioneers. My name is Daniel Rayner. I'm the host of Process Pioneers, and we have a very interesting, a very exciting conversation in store for you today. I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Jun Matsuo. And now Jun is a process mining evangelist based in Japan. And we could say that Jun is the first process mining evangelist, and potentially, I'm not sure if there are many others doing this, but one of the only ones in Japan that is promoting process mining and looking into how can process mining deliver significant value to an organization in Japan. So really excited to talk to you, Jun, and understand your journey and your story. Thanks for sitting down with me today.
Well, hi, Daniel. I thank you for having me. I am very honored to be invited on Process Pioneers today.
That's great. That's fantastic. And what I'd like to understand is, when were you first introduced to the topic of BPM, and then take us on a bit of a journey leading up to what you're doing today.
Okay, that may be a long story, but I have been working as a marketing researcher and data scientist for many years. And I have been engaged in various types of research and data analysis, including data mining to deal with big data. At the same time, as an expert in marketing and new business development, I've been planning and executing business and marketing plans, creating content. Also, I managed some system development, such as CRM system and a business intelligence system. 3 years ago, I encountered process mining, as the company I was working for at the time started providing a process mining solution. So I was in charge of sales and marketing for it, as well as supporting clients, Japanese clients who introduced process mining as a data scientist and a process mining consultant. Since going independent about a year and a half ago, I have been working as a process mining evangelist, as you said, preaching process mining and BPM in Japan and helping Japanese companies improve and innovate their business process. Okay,
that's amazing.
In retrospect, process mining and BPA are not new themes for me. Although it was only 3 years ago that I really started to focus on applying BPM using process mining, but I have been working with process mindset for a long time before that. I would say I've been a process guy for more than 30 years.
Yes, right.
My background in process orientation goes back to my university days. At the time, I belonged to the Faculty of Commerce, majoring in commerce. However, I happened to take a seminar in the Faculty of Science and Engineering.
Right.
It was a seminar on information science. And I don't remember now why I chose that seminar, but I didn't really understand what I'm going to learn. But it turned out to be systems thinking. The professor of the seminar taught us systems thinking. It's not only about IT system. Let me explain it briefly. A system is a collection of interrelated and interdependent elements, often with a complex structure that result in a variety of behavior and outcomes in it. For example, our body is a system, and a company or society can also be considered as a system.
Right.
So, and there are many ways to derive or depict a system, but the ones I learned is how to write a cause-effect diagram to show the relationship between cause and effect, and the causal loop diagrams, which are based on the system dynamics approach. Then I was fascinated and learned more about system thinking those younger days. So after graduating from the university and started to work, I have been looking at everything through the lens of system thinking. I try to understand the as-is situation by creating models using causal loop diagrams and doing some simulation. And after envisioning the ideal system, I designed and implemented the procedures or processes to move from the as-is situation to the ideal system.
Right.
I like to take more time to explain what system is all about.
Mm-hmm.
The starting point of systems thinking is to consider the mechanism that convert inputs into outputs and adding some values to it most of the time. The mechanism can also be referred to as function. So clarifying the mechanism or function of this conversion means understanding the interrelationships and the temporal order of various elements or activities, which is nothing but clarifying the process.
Right.
So, for example, the entire marketing activity, which I am specialized in, consists of 3 subsystems, which are marketing system, sales system, and service system. The inputs to the marketing system are non-customers. When you put non-customers into the marketing system, you get the output of potential customers or prospects.
Right.
Thus, the marketing system is the mechanism that converts non-customers into prospects. And this mechanism contains the unique structure and the process for its conversion.
Right.
Then the sales system takes the prospects generated by the marketing system and converts them to customers. This means that the sales system has a mechanism to convert prospects into customers. And finally, the service system generates repeat customers by taking care of the customers generated by the sales system properly. So the service system is the mechanism that converts customers into repeat customers. So in order to plan and design an entire marketing activity, you need to clarify the inputs and outputs, then plan and design a process that will work in an integrated manner to achieve the specific goal and objectives.
Yes.
So in this way, I'm currently working on various process improvements and innovations in companies and organizations with systems thinking as my backbone.
Yes, right. Okay. No, that's great. And thanks for sharing that. That's great context for the audience to understand where you're coming from and what you're doing at the moment. But for the organizations that you are working with, what would you say are some of the biggest drivers for adopting BPM? I know that for some organizations, they are looking to cut waste out of their processes. For other organizations, they've adopted BPM in the last 18 months because of COVID, because COVID's disrupted their entire supply chain. So they've needed to understand how are we going to change our processes. For other organizations, they want more transparency around what's actually being done. So from your perspective, though, what are some of the biggest drivers you've noticed for an organization to adopt BPM?
Well, when embarking on BPM journey, higher returns or higher ROI can be obtained by improving larger and longer processes, such as end-to-end processes that span multiple departments. However, when many departments are involved in the process to be improved, the biggest obstacle is to achieve good coordination among departments. As you know, Japanese companies have been conducting Kaizen. Kaizen means change for the better, for a long time. Kaizen was initially conducted in the manufacturing plant. And one floor production side, the production process can literally grasped visually with your own eyes. This made it easy to visualize the current process, by walking around, and which in turn made it easy to find and solve problems, so-called various waste or muda. Okay. Yes. However, this is basically a small-sized, small-scale improvement activity within limited departments. On the other hand, a larger process involving many departments, it is difficult to visualize the entire process quickly. Even if you understand the process of your own department, it is not easy to understand the process of the other departments in the front end or the back end process. So from the perspective of system thinking, each department is a system with its own individual inputs and outputs and conversion mechanism. But
Right.
as they are interconnected and function as a larger system of the company or subsystem of the company, improvements in individual departments are only achieved as partial optimization, which may lead to inefficiencies and bottlenecks in the other department processes. Therefore, as you said, in today's severe environment where there is a growing need to work on company-wide process improvement or digital transformation, the biggest challenge is to how to successfully implement such initiatives from a company-wide perspective.
Yes, right. No, that's very interesting. And for an organization that does adopt BPM and does implement it, what are some of the biggest challenges you've noticed an organization face when bringing, I guess, starting that BPM approach?
Challenges. As I said, it's a big challenge is to get a cooperation from multiple departments. But I think I'd like to mention the two biggest success factors to overcome those challenges.
Yeah, great.
And to achieve effective BPM efforts achievement. One is the commitment of top management. The another one is the existence of internal experts or specialized unit to lead a BPM initiative company-wide. As I mentioned earlier, a small-scale Kaizen in individual department can be carried out by frontline employees in the course of their work. But when it comes to company-wide Kaizen or end-to-end process innovation, it is difficult to get departments to cooperate and align their activities because their interests often differ and conflicts are likely to arise. Therefore, it is necessary for top management to set a clear direction and goal for the corporate innovation or digital innovation, and to make sure that all departments can cooperate with each other to achieve it.
Yes.
Right. And in the case of cross-department improvement efforts, it is necessary to have specialists such as business analysts and data scientists or specially assigned units that has such specialists internally. Of course, you can invite some specialists from outside, but in order to graph this process and design the ID process from a neutral and objective standpoint, you should have a specialized task force or unit to work on improvement. Okay?
That's good.
You see, many companies call the special unit as a center of excellence, but in Japan, it is often called the DEX promotion office or the BPL department, as far as I know.
Yeah. So no, that's great.
So it goes without saying that the top management commitment is a must as a driver for company-wide BPM initiative. But in addition to that, existence of a specialized unit is important from the perspective of ambidextrous BPM.
Right.
Ambidextrous BPM, as proposed by Michael Roseman, is a parallel approach to exploitation and exploration. You see, exploitation is aimed at optimizing the current process, and its main objective is to reduce inefficiencies and bottlenecks, which is where process mining analysis is very useful, you see.
Yes.
On the other hand, exploration is to come up with basically a completely new process or business model to provide a better customer experience or generate more revenue to accommodate the changing environment. So analytical approach is required for exploitation, while a creative approach is required for exploration. An individual department may be able to take on the task of exploitation because it is basically a current process improvement. However, exploration is more difficult for frontline employees. is it possible to think in such a divisive way as to come up with a completely new process or business model while striving for effectively, while striving for efficiency in the task to be executed at hand, right? So, but however, the specialized unit can work on both exploitation and exploration while clarifying current processes and working on end-to-end process improvement. It is also possible to devise new business models and associated processes from scratch. They may be able to launch small pilot programs to validate them and roll out company-wide after that.
That's great. And I think it is an important thing for organizations to invest into or be aware of, that balance between exploitation and exploration.
Sure.
I think a lot of organizations will, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say a lot of organizations sit in the exploitation camp more so than the exploration camp. But I've heard it said before that, if you're not going to disrupt yourself as a business, then you're leaving it open to anyone else out there to disrupt you. If you're not willing to create the new future. And I think we've seen that in a number of different startups that have disrupted entire industries. I mean, one that's probably closer to home for me is this software called Canva. And Canva is basically a competitor to Photoshop in a sense, because we have entire graphic design teams now that are choosing to use Canva as a tool because it's more intuitive than using Photoshop, which has traditionally been the graphic design tool of choice. And Canva, and I was just reading an article just before I jumped into this call that Canva's now valued at like $40-50 billion. This is no small startup company anymore. It's disrupted an entire industry. And so I think that exploration component is very important because, as I said, if you're not willing to disrupt yourself, someone else is going to do that for you.
Yeah, you made that point. I use that tool too.
Yes.
It is very convenient and easy to use.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, a great point there, I think, about exploration and needing to manage both and juggle both. Would you say that, more organizations tend to fall into the exploitation camp and maybe struggle with the exploration, which is less analytical and does require more creative thinking about, well, how are we going to deliver value in a totally different way?
Yeah, so it is very difficult for us to be creative most of the time, right? It can be analytical by using mathematical analysis, your data analysis, by using the process mining tools. So you need to take specific time to consider things from a creative way, So most companies fall into a exploitation camp rather than try to go for a creative camp, exploration camp. But I think more and more companies should opt for a creative way of thinking by exploration approach.
Yeah, that's right. That's good. And I think I know that large organizations are investing into that because they're creating these internal incubators where that they are almost trying to create this startup environment internally to try and foster these new ideas and these new ways of thinking. But just coming back to BPM and talking about obviously, there are a number of different challenges that come along with it, but there is a reason why organizations adopt BPM is because it does deliver value and it can deliver significant value. Do you have a couple of examples or stories you can share where an organization has adopted BPM and it has delivered significant value to what they were doing. And obviously, feel free to censor any names or any company names or anything like that. But yeah, I think that's something our audience would love to learn from you is, where has BPM been adopted, and what has been the outcome of that?
It is important to gain the cooperation of the end users, our frontline employees. So it was very effective. It is very effective to visualize the process and share it with them. That's why process mining is very useful too for doing it. Unlike in the past, and much of our work is now done in business systems, making it increasingly invisible or untransparent. Even if you and your colleagues are in the same office, you can immediately see what your colleagues next to you are doing. In the past, you could get a rough idea of what your colleagues or boss were doing by hearing them on the phone or snooping on the documents they were engaging on their desks. Now we cannot do that, especially when most of us work from home these days. Therefore, we can take advantage of process mining to visualize and show the end-to-end process, including all the departments involved. By looking at the visualized process, you will be able to understand where the tasks you are in charge of are located and what role you play in the overall process. And you'll be able to easily identify where the process is stagnant and where there may be rooms for improvement. If you can see the problem, you'll be motivated to improve. That's sure. Once they understand that it will make their work easier, improve customer satisfaction, increase profits, and they will be rewarded at the end of the day. So it will be relatively easy to get their cooperation by visualizing their process, they are engaged in.
Yes. It reminds me of a conversation I had the other day where an organization had, I guess they began documenting their business processes down. And before they had even started any improvement activity, before they'd even started identifying bottlenecks or weaknesses or long idle times or any of that, before they'd done any of that, just simply by getting their processes down in some visual form in a software, they were able to sort of understand that, hey, we've got multiple people around the organization doubling up on some of this activity. Just by documenting this information down, they're already seeing a return, even without tweaking the process or improving the processes. It's just by step one, there's value to be found there.
You can get a small win. You can get a small win by showing the visual process or sharing the process visualized with the frontline employees. They'll be automatically motivated to improve things they do, right? Yes.
That's right. And I think it also provides or gives ownership to the people, the process participants, because they can see what they need to be done, and they can, I guess, in a sense, measure their own performance to make sure that they are conforming to the process. There's transparency there, that there isn't a question or doubt as to, am I doing what I need to be doing? If they've got that documentation there, it's very simple what they need to be doing. And so they can, I guess, measure their own performance and it gives them their own accountability. But I guess when working with process participants, we've talked about getting buy-in from the top management. But we have people listening to this podcast who are those internal experts, BPM practitioners. How do they go about getting buy-in from the process participants, the ones that are actually carrying out the process? Because I'd imagine that if you don't get the process participants on board, you might face a little bit of resistance there.
Well, you know, mm, internal specialists should encourage frontline employees, process participants to improve themselves by getting involved in the process improvement activities. As I said, they will be rewarded after all by working on process improvement activities. So that we should tell them the benefits of process mining improvement.
Yes,
right. How it can affect their personal life or business objectives, right?
Yeah. I think that's great, because obviously whoever you're talking to, they're going to have different objectives themselves. Whether you're talking to top management or process participants, they're all of them are going to have different things that keep them awake at night. So you need to understand, well, who am I talking to, and what language do I need to be using? What do I need to be saying to them to get them on board? Because sometimes, using the language that you use for process participants, that's not you're not speaking the same language there as if you were speaking to top management, and the same vice versa. The language you use for top management, it's going to be different to what you're talking about with process participants. They're going to, I guess, be driven, have different driving motivators. I guess you could say that.
Oh, but I need to mention that it is not easy to get buy-in from top management, right? Especially for in Japanese companies. It is often said that many Japanese companies, especially large corporations, have top executives who have risen from the ranks of new graduate, right, and never changed jobs during their career, and often called often called a salaried president. Many of them prefer stability and dislike change. So I think external pressure, is the only way to motivate such top executives. If you be able to show them the competitors are working on BPM and being successful, they like to go forward with innovation in order not to lose the battle. As a matter of fact, that top executives of companies, Japanese companies that undertake bold and innovate drastic changes, are often not people who have risen through the ranks in order from the graduate student, but mavericks who were once kicked out of the mainstream but called back as a terminator, who just destroyed the entire structure to rebuild from scratch, or descendants of the founding families who are called oddballs in the company but willing to take risks with the founders' backup. So otherwise, it is quite difficult for you to convince the top management to work on corporate transformation. A friend of mine, experienced business analyst, advises that it is better to change jobs, look for a better company, rather than to try to persuade the salaried president to transform the company, right? I like to agree with him to some extent.
Yes, that's a really interesting insight there, because I think, and maybe it's different in different cultures and things like that. I feel like over here in that ANZ region, we do have a lot of people that are moving around from one organization to another. They'll move from one organization that has a high level of process maturity, and then they will be brought into an organization that has a low level of process maturity, and they'll be able to start driving that buy-in and getting that interest there. So I mean, it's never an easy pitch, I should say, when trying to sell the idea to top management, because they're obviously going to have their own preconceived ideas and ways that they need to deliver value. And for some of them, it may include BPM. For others, they may have never have touched BPM in their life. But I guess as well as showing them competitors, you mentioned this, as well as showing them competitors and what they're doing and the value they're getting out of BPM, I would say that the last 18 months has really put pressure on organizations to understand and look at their supply chains and their processes to be like, well, how are you delivering value? What have you noticed over the last 18 months in this pandemic time? Have you noticed an appetite for BPM is growing?
Yes, it is. It is growing. Their appetite is growing because they are forced to work more efficiently in the COVID-19 situation. COVID-19 pandemic disrupted everything. We are forced to work from home, right? And the supply chain was corrupted, right? So, as they say, COVID-19 pandemic is kind of follow wind for BPM practitioners, or because the company wants to adopt BPM, to improve or rebuild the entire processes from a broader perspective.
Yeah, that's right. And I think organizations have been forced to adapt, and if they're not willing to adapt, things are difficult for them. I think for some organizations, they've been forced into a position where they've actually come up with some very creative and innovative ideas and ways of delivering value to customers. I think new industries or at least new processes and methods for delivering value have been developed over the last 18 months. Sure. I think it's fostered, it's really fostered this creative thinking, this out of the box thinking. But when you look to the future of business process management over the next 2, 3, 5 years, what trends are you noticing, and where would you encourage organizations to be investing their time, effort, and energy?
Okay, as more and more companies around the world are engaging in digital transformation, sooner or later, most of their work will be done on systems, and the history of operations or digital footprint will be recorded as the transaction data and the user interaction data. So as a result, almost all companies will have a built-in mechanism, system to analyze and monitor their business processes in near real time, and to quickly identify and correct any problems while conducting their daily business. So this system will be an integration of process intelligence solutions such as BPMS, process mining, task mining, etc. And it can be considered with the realization of the so-called digital twin. But nevertheless, it is still a matter of optimizing and maintaining or exploiting the current process. So while at the same time continuing to search for ways to constantly adapt to the ever-changing external environment. So I believe that the BPM remains the most important tool for business analysts and other professionals, as it is a comprehensive discipline and the methodology, that covers both exploitation and exploration approaches.
Right. And for those people that are listening to this podcast, to this episode, maybe you've sparked an idea or you've piqued their interest in BPM and process mining and what it can do for their organization. For those that want to learn more about this topic, where would you encourage them to go? Like, obviously, you're noticing that their appetite is growing in Japan, and more people are interested in learning about BPM and what value it can bring to their organization. Where would you encourage these people to go to continue this journey? Is it going to online resources, or is it talking to finding mentors in the space, or what would you encourage them to do?
Okay. There are various methodologies that can be used for process improvement, such as Kaizen and lean management. Which is an extended version of Kaizen, Six Sigma, etc. You can find excellent books and websites and other resources on each of them. But however, in practice, it is necessary to use various methodologies or methods in a different ways, depending on the situation. So, the more weapons you have, the stronger you can be. So in
Right.
this sense, it is important to have an overview by reading BPM textbooks that embrace all methodologies. As I said, that will cover exploitation and exploration techniques. Therefore, first, I like to recommend them to read the fundamentals of business process management, the book written by Marlon Dumas, Malte La Rosa, Ian Mandling, and Hayo Reyes. You know what? I have been translating it for the Japanese version of it,
Right.
which will be published as early as possible. Maybe sometime next year. There are a few books. There are a few books related to business process management. So the Japanese version of fundamentals of business process management will become popular among business people. That I hope it will be. Also, the practice of BPM is essentially a change management. So I recommend the Business Process Change written by Paul Harmon.
Mm-hmm.
Understand? Then you can look for other resources, and you can talk with the mentors or professionals in BPM field. That will be valuable for you to learn more about the BPM.
Yes, yeah.
Or process mining.
Yes, yeah, that's fantastic. And I think as people read and consume information and content like these books that you're mentioning, it's going to give them a good foundation to start off from. So, I mean, every organization is different. So you read these books, you watch these podcasts, you learn from different people, but you've got to go back and understand, well, where is our organization at? What is our process maturity level? Do we manage our business processes, or is this entirely new for us? And that's obviously going to determine your next steps and where you should be investing your time, effort, and energy. But I think reading this information and these books that you're talking about, it's a good foundation. It's a good place to start to get a good perspective on BPM as a topic, and also what it can bring to the organization. But Jun, I just want to thank you for sitting down with me and having this conversation today. I've certainly been learning a lot from you, and I know that our audience will learn a lot from yourself as well. It's very exciting to know that you, as a process mining evangelist, is in Japan, you're talking about the value that it brings to organizations. And I think, as more and more organizations adopt this BPM approach and process mining technology, I think the momentum is only going to grow and grow and grow. So I just want to thank you for sitting down and having this chat with me today.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. I'm happy to talk with you. Thank you.